I mean, one of the more ironic consequences from the rollout of DeepSeek can also be encapsulated by Melanie Hart of the Atlantic Council, saying at a recent Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing, quote, "Let's steal their best engineers. We'd be better off if the engineers behind that were working here in the US." This is ironic because, as you have covered extensively, the Red Scare McCarthyist tactics that have been used against Chinese nationals in recent years within the US, which has seen many top level scientists and engineers driven out and forced to go back to China. I'm hearing more stories of those really high level engineers, inventors, scientists going back to China, to teach or for jobs, for opportunities. Can you expand on this? And also, in your opinion, do you think this will actually lead to any changes? Because they're saying how are they going to steal the engineers back?
Yeah, yeah. It is really ironic. Like after DeepSeek, this woman from the Atlantic Council is saying that we need to steal the best Chinese engineers because over the past few years, we've created such a hostile environment for them that nobody from China really wants to stay here anymore. Over the last few decades, China represented the number one country in sending their researchers to the US. That number has been steadily declining, like in large part because of this hostile environment created by the new Cold War. And a lot of these Chinese researchers that are here, they're deciding to move back to China because of discrimination, first of all, and because they fear being targeted by the US government. The Trump administration in 2018, he launched what's called the China Initiative program. And so through this program, the Department of Justice started going after and persecuting Chinese scientists and engineers for supposedly like espionage activities and intellectual property theft. So, of course, the China initiative was nothing more than a McCarthyite witch hunt. A lot of cases that were brought as part of the China initiative program, they were due to something fairly simple, like a researcher not disclosing foreign affiliations on grant applications. So they were charged for something as simple as not filling out an application correctly. And most of the cases that were eventually brought against them ended up in dismissals. And a lot of those charged accused investigators of misconduct. But for a period of time, these scientists had these really serious charges kind of hanging over their heads, and they were living in fear. And a lot of times it ruined their lives. There was this one Chinese researcher in the United States named Jane Wu. She was a really prominent professor of neurology at Northwestern University. She had her lab confiscated because of the program, because she had charges brought against her because of the China initiative. And because of that, she took her own life. So that's just like one example of how something like this can totally ruin your life. So the Biden administration ended this program in 2022, but the legacy still remains, right? So the question of will this strategy of trying to steal top engineers from China, will it work? No, I don't think so. Because one, why would you want to come here if you're going to be targeted by the FBI and have your life ruined? And two, China has developed their scientific and research sector in a way that they're now surpassing the US by this point. There's not really a lot of reason for them to come here anymore, especially if they're just going to be put in this kind of hostile environment where they're constantly subject to government surveillance, anti-Asian discrimination, stuff like that. China has now edged out the US to become the top producer of most cited scientific papers, as well as number one in scientific research output. So I just don't really see how they can convince Chinese researchers to come here, given all that's happened in the past few years. And I think like this is clearly another example of the US shooting itself in its own foot. Their scientific research output is declining, and China is quickly surpassing them.